Hey, welcome back to the Caribou Data Science channel. This is the evening of Wednesday, December the 28th, 2022. The year is rapidly coming to an end. Nonetheless, I'll be back here. We'll take a 15-minute break. We'll be back with you folks here, 15 minutes to get tonight's show on the road, okay? Okie dokie. Okay, welcome back to the Caribou Data Science channel again. This is, of course, as I think it is Wednesday evening, right? Yes, it's Wednesday evening, December the 28th. The year is quickly winding down. Another year in the books. A very eventful year for me. Uh, the highlight of this year certainly was a trip to Israel and to Jerusalem and to the Western Wall. Okay, so what should we do this evening? That's an interesting question. Of course, the hot topic is continuing to be the chat what GPT. uh, artificial intelligence online app which can do some pretty crazy things. I've had it so far. I've had the chat program create a short story about three walruses in William Shakespeare style, and a short story about three walruses using Ernest Hemingway style. Okay, so you know what let's do? Let's just add another mix in here. Okay, let's see who wrote Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice. It wasn't what I was expecting here. Good grief. Walrus. So trying to write a story about three walruses in the style of Jane Austen. Okay. Let's just see here. This is actually a fairly long story. It was a crisp autumn day in the small village of Walrusbury, and the three walruses, Carolyn, Elizabeth, and Darcy, were bustling about preparing for the annual harvest ball. Caroline was the oldest of the three, was a vain and self-absorbed walrus who cared only about her own appearance and social standing. She spent hours in front of the mirror trying to on different dresses and hairstyles, determined to be the belle of the ball. Elizabeth, the middle walrus, was kind and intelligent, with a quick wit and a sharp tongue. She often found Carolyn's preoccupation with superficial matters to be tiresome and preferred to spend her time uh, reading and learning new things. Darcy was the youngest of the three, was the most dramatic of the group. He was handsome, wealthy, but had a reputation for being haughty and aloof. He rarely attended social events, preferring to spend his time alone on his sprawling estate. As the day of the ball drew near, Carolyn became more and more anxious about making a good impression. She begged Elizabeth and Darcy to accompany her, hoping that their presence would enhance her own standing in the eyes of the visitors. Elizabeth and Darcy reluctantly agreed, and the three Walshes set off for the ball. As they danced and mingled with the other villagers, Carolyn did her best to flaunt her beauty and charm, hoping to catch the eye of an eligible suitor. But despite her efforts, she found herself overshadowed by Elizabeth, whose wit and kindness endeared her to everyone she met. Darcy, meanwhile, remained aloof and distant, only joining in the dancing when he was requested to by a particularly attractive walrus. As the evening wore on, Elizabeth and Darcy found themselves drawn to one another, and the two began to see each other in a new light. They discovered that they shared a love of literature and a passion for learning, and before long they're inseparable. Carolyn, meanwhile, was left to stew in her own jealousy and disappointment as she watched her two friends fall in love. But as she reflected on her own shallow ways, she began to see the error of her ways and vowed to be kinder and more selfless walrus in the future. So, as the autumn moon rose high in the sky, the three walruses said their goodbyes and returned home, each with newfound appreciation for the truly what matters in life. Do 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 do. I may have overdone it with the laxative this afternoon. Anyway, what should we go here? Now, Chat GPT, if I'm spelling that right. Um, it's apparently been around for a while, but I've actually first discovered it. And apparently, there's a version 4 in the pipeline right now, also. Okay, let's go to watch later. We have a bunch of stuff here and watch later, don't I? Let's try history. Oh, okay. Let's change this over here. Jacob. Let's see what this guy has to say about GDP. Okay.
And its tools and models to actually build websites, applications, and businesses. And the third and final part will be the technical aspect, which is ChatGPT is more than just a language model. It can be used to create websites, businesses, and much, much more. And I would know because I created, built, and sold a business on OpenAI's platform just this year. So in this video, I'm going to explain how you can do the same using ChatGPT and its models. I've structured this video in 3 different parts. The first part of this video will cover the real-world example of the business I created and then sold. The second part of this video will cover how to use ChatGPT and its tools and models to actually build websites, applications, and businesses. And the third and final part will be the technical aspect, which is what this actually looks like behind the scenes, what you have to do in terms of writing the actual code and how to implement it into your own application or website. If at any point you feel stuck or you want more information, I also have 3 useful videos that'll help you. The very first is an introduction to what ChatGPT is and how it works. The second is a crash course on using ChatGPT, essentially doing the prompts and getting the outputs that you would like. And the third and final one is the behind the scenes look at the business I created called Enhance UI. All of these videos should have popped up as tooltips up here. Otherwise, they'll also be in the link in the description below. So let's start off with the first part of this video, how ChatGPT is more than just a model for chatting to an AI and how it can be used to solve problems as well as create business opportunities. They've only recently opened up ChatGPT to be available and free for anyone to use, which means you can try it out right now at the link in the description below. But on top of that, they've also made the OpenAI models available for anyone to build out any ideas, whether it's for your own business or even just an idea or a hobby you have. So while OpenAI had this restricted behind a private beta, I was lucky enough to get access to that private beta. These models weren't as refined as ChatGPT is today. You had to play around with lots of parameters to get the outputs you wanted, and there was no nice interface to be able to chat along with it. You can still access that playground. I'll link it in the description below, where you get to play around with a bit of a sandbox of ChatGPT and its models, and you can also figure out exactly how you might consider building your own business or ideas. So moving back to this idea that I built up. It was to solve my own problems back then. These problems were to do with development and coding because I was making a lot of mistakes and I wanted to see if this AI model could basically help me solve them. And so I trained GPT to do this quite effectively. I built a front end and a back end around this website and I called it Enhance AI. It was essentially just like ChatGPT, just dumbed down a little bit so that any developer could get answers to very specific questions that they were asking. Questions included explaining a piece of code, very similar to what ChatGPT does now, as well as converting a piece of code from, say, JavaScript to Python, and many, many more examples. While this kind of worked, the original models from OpenAI, which were called DaVinci at the time, weren't that great at coding. It wasn't until Codex was released, this model which is specifically designed for GitHub Copilot, that we started to see the coding opportunities from OpenAI. Unfortunately, the release of GitHub Copilot also made my OpenAI model a little bit redundant, so I pivoted and focused more on content writing as well as blogs and blog outlines. I created a content editor that was using OpenAI's models, and this actually was quite successful. I created a number of really cool features here, things like fixing grammar, lengthening sentences, and even a micro predict feature, which would essentially write out a paragraph for you, similar to what you have in Gmail, but in an entire paragraph rather than just a word or two. So I decided to take this business to market. I listed it on a website called MicroAcquire. This is a website where you can list businesses for sale, even business ideas, and I was able to sell it to
Okay, by the way, I should mention that I stream Monday through Friday, sometimes on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Uh, be sure to click the subscribe button and also click that bell button so you'll be notified whenever I do go live. Okay, and if you are in the background there, like I say, don't be shy. Stop by the chat session and say hi.
to a third-party blogging organization. I went on to sell this for about $30,000, and this should give you an idea of how ChatGPT, OpenAI, and its models can be used to start any type of business in any type of industry. With that said, let's move on to the second part of this video. In this part, I want to explain exactly how you yourself can start building and utilizing the OpenAI models, as well as ChatGPT itself, in your day-to-day life, as well as to build your own startup, business idea, or much, much more. I'll do this in two parts. The first, we'll have a look at ChatGPT itself to see exactly how you can use it in business and in work, and even just in your personal life. The second part will be having a look at the more advanced models that ChatGPT is based on. Traditionally, you would use ChatGPT to ask questions. Questions like how to build a website. Unfortunately, questions like this don't provide the best results simply because it will only give you a text-based response. If you want to be smarter around your prompts, you'll be able to get much more information. The very first part of this is actually putting in specific code that you might want to have solved and then prompting ChatGPT to solve it for you. So as an example of that, instead of saying how to build a website, we could say build a website starter template for a page called index.html. For this example, instead of just getting a text-based reply on how to build a website, we'll actually get the code involved in build. It'll look something like this, and you'll be able to simply copy-paste the code straight in. This, of course, applies to any problem you might have. You can ask ChatGPT to essentially write any type of code, whether it's a JavaScript function to complete an event where it tracks your mouse, or some Python code to do some algebra. Of course, not all businesses are developer related. There are certain businesses that might be, say, in recruitment, and it might involve, for example, scanning through lots of resumes. ChatGPT can be used to scan through a resume and then identify key criteria such as skills or job experience, and then pull those individuals out to mark them for review. A feature like this could save countless hours to a recruiter who, for example, might have to scan through thousands of resumes every single day. And this is just the beginning of the kind of practical use cases that ChatGPT might have on business. I'm going to show some practical examples so that you guys can use this to apply it in your own industries. Here, I'm going to get ChatGPT to write a cover letter for a developer with skills in Angular. Of course, this is a bit of joke. We're actually looking for a React.js candidate. And with that, we're going to ask OpenAI's system here to check whether or not this person has React.js experience. We're going to only ask for a yes or no reply. Predefined prompts like this, where you can copy paste a resume in and then ask ChatGPT to answer for you a yes or no reply, will essentially make the job of the recruiter much easier. And this is where we'll now start to take a step outside of just ChatGPT and have a look at OpenAI's other models as well as its playground to really test the boundaries of what's possible in terms of doing things just like this. What you'll need to do is head over to the original OpenAI website by simply removing the chat part of the domain and just going to openai.com. Head over to APIs and then select to login. If you've created a login with ChatGPT, then you should be able to log in to this interface just fine. Once you've logged in, you'll be taken to this dashboard here.
I'll be right back. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? She says, "Where are we?" She said, "Where are we?" I've never said, "Where are we?" And Washington says, "We're on the street where you live." Yeah, that's from that. That's a reference to the movie she played in, My Fair Lady. Yeah, that's yeah. Not yet, man. Not yet.
Which normally you could go to OpenAI's ChatGPT 3, but in this example, we're going to head over to the quick start tutorials as well as the examples. I'm going to head over to examples here, and we're going to get quite a few different types here. I'm not going to cover all of these models, but it is a good idea to actually test these out yourselves because there are quite a few interesting things that ChatGPT's models can do here. Things like convert movies to emojis or classify text. There's quite a few different examples here, but let's actually have a look at a simple one. I'm going to start off with this summarization for a second grader, and this will open up in the playground environment. This playground, you'll notice, is all text-based, but the difference here in terms of ChatGPT as well as this playground is the fact that it is all in one big text box. You ask your question here, and ChatGPT 3, or at least Text DaVinci 003, will give you a response. I've clicked submit so that you guys can have a look, and it comes out with the summary here for Jupyter. Now, what's interesting to note is the different models we have available to us here. This is not technically ChatGPT. This is DaVinci 003. It has different responses. So does Curie and some of the other examples, like even Crushman, which is sort of like the Codex model that GitHub Copilot is based on. Now, using these, we can even customize them further with things like the temperature here, which is technically a statistic of randomness, where a temperature of 0 give us no randomness, whereas a statistic of 1 will give us lots and lots of randomness in the answers. These are all predefined in ChatGPT, but these are all customizable inside of the playground. And this is why this is the best place to start building a website or a business or an application idea, because you'll have full control to test out the environment. And this is the segue to the next part of this video, where once you get a better idea of how to use the playground and getting prompts and outputs that you want, you can start creating an API layer to interact with the OpenAI platform directly and build a SaaS on top of it. I want to showcase one more example before we move on. Let's head over to examples and go to chat. This is going to give you an idea of, for example, how the OpenAI platform originally conceptualized OpenAI's ChatGPT 3. Here you have some general settings for the conversation, which is that it is between a human and an AI assistant. We have a few rules as well for it to be helpful, creative, clever, and friendly. And this is where the conversation begins. We can say, "What is your name?" And here the AI will give us a response. As you can see, this is fundamentally what ChatGPT looks like. But here is where you can create your own type of interface with your own type of rules and allow you to build a business with your own type of chat as well. Now, hopefully this gave you a good idea of all of these things that are happening in the background. But how do we interact with this? How would we build a front-end website to integrate an API to start talking to these models? This is the third part of this video, and this part will be quite technical. We're going to take a look at the code that's happening in the background, the requests and the responses that we can perform as part of the OpenAI model for its API. There's a lot of documentation documentation you guys can have a look at, which I'll link in the description below. But this will be using the JavaScript interface. I'm going to be writing some code in VS Studio, and we're going to be using VS Studio Code to essentially engage with the OpenAI platform. Now, if this part doesn't interest you, you can hit the like and subscribe button. But if you want to learn what's happening behind the scenes, now we get to take a look. To start off with, it's quite useful to head over to the documentation and scroll down a little bit to the completions part of the API. We have a few examples here of doing a completion using the GPT-3 models, but these are basically if you're doing a HTTP request. We're going to be using Node.js in this example. We're going to be downloading the OpenAI module, and we're going to be using it to create requests directly through to OpenAI's platform. Then we can use these requests and structure them in any way we want. Let's take a look at how this works. I've downloaded and installed Node.js, and I've also downloaded and installed VS Studio Code. Here, I've created a new folder called ChatGPT, and I'm going to create a file called index.js. I'm also going to install the OpenAI platform by running npm install OpenAI. Here, we're going to be able to use this module to start interacting with OpenAI. I also have a package.json here, and as part of that package.json, I'm going to add in a type, and here we're going to do module. This is just so that instead of doing requires, we can do imports. Heading back to the OpenAI platform here, we can now go to the documentation and simply copy paste the code we have here for creating a completion. We'll head back into VS Code, and we're going to paste this into our index file. We only need to do one other thing here, which is to implement the API key. To do that, we're going to head back to the website. We're going to head over to View API Keys here under your dashboard, and we're going to get a copy of your secret key. Now, I have one over here. I'm going to create a brand new one for testing here, and I'll delete this after this video. So don't try and copy this. But for your own key, just make sure that you keep it private and do not show it publicly anywhere, because it will be using the credit that you have from your account. Now let's head back to VS Code and let's plug this bad boy in. I'm going to apply it here where we normally should do it as a process environment key, but for this test, this should be enough. Finally, I'm going to update this statement here to be an import instead of a require.
Okay, well, yes, not to get that a little personal, but I think I may have overdone the X-lax this morning. On the plus side, I'm definitely getting cleaned out.
Require, and that's about it. We can now test this out by calling node and calling index.js. Here, we're going to get a response back from the server, but we're not console logging it out. So I'm going to console log, and we're going to log out the response here. And we're also going to call out the data that we get. This should show up now in the terminal, and here we get the response. So it says, this is a test, and the response is, this is indeed a test, which means that it was successful. We do get some other information here, like the ID and the object, as well as the model, when it was created, and a couple of others. But this is a quick and basic example of how you can interact with the API. These are the essential building blocks of how you would build a business using OpenAI and its models. If, for example, you have some interesting ideas, you can use this and wrap it around a shell and then serve it to customers. In this regard, the sky's the limit. It's up to your own imaginations as to how you want to utilize OpenAI's models, but hopefully this gives you enough information to go by. If you want more advanced examples of all of this, let me know in the comments below and I can do a follow-up video of exactly how this is possible too. Otherwise, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month, if not more, just from this app on my phone. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's called Audible. Okay, so I'm gonna show you. Right here, I have a check from Audible. This
ChatGPT is one of the most trending topics right now. It's been less than a week since its release, and people's minds are being blown with what it can do. It's also breaking records, with over 1 million users signed up in just 5 days, faster than Netflix, Twitter, Facebook, even Instagram. No longer will you be Googling the answers to problems. ChatGPT gives breakdowns of them in fine detail, with explanations exactly how it works. This will make people question just how relevant Google will be in the coming future. Do you want to know the limitations of TypeScript? ChatGPT has you covered. But what exactly is ChatGPT? What makes it so powerful? These are things I wanted to find out. It's built by the same people that are behind OpenAI, which are now shaping some really interesting technologies. They've been building powerful engines like Codex, which is the engine behind GitHub Copilot, something that many of us are already using in our day-to-day coding on VS Code. And if you're looking closely, you might see the beginnings of ChatGPT, where people put in prompts and they get outputs from an AI-generated system. Another example was DALL-E 2, which was an image generator based on prompts you enter. Here you get different types of visualizations of a spaceman on a horse, and lots of other examples, even extending out classical artwork. ChatGPT is therefore a way of prompting an AI to solve or answer a question or a prompt in a human-like manner, very different from anything else we've seen before. And this can sound scary, very scary, especially to organizations like Stack Overflow, which pride themselves on solving problems with human-related answers. They've actually gone as far as banning ChatGPT out from their systems. This is because they want to build a level of trust on there. And if people simply copy-paste answers from GPT without any references, that might break that level of trust. This is all quite interesting, but let me have a look at ChatGPT under the hood by actually using it and seeing just how useful it will become as part of our day-to-day lives in development as well as any industry. In case you didn't know, ChatGPT is entirely free. If you want to try it out yourself, simply go to OpenAI, log in with a brand new account, and then select the ChatGPT interface. I'm quite fond of the design. It's nice and simple, giving you the examples as well as some capabilities and limitations of ChatGPT. Some of these capabilities are quite powerful, things like remembering what a user said in a conversation and providing follow-up corrections as well. The first thing I wanted to do is to see if it could tell me what Python or TypeScript is. And it gave me a pretty sound answer, saying that TypeScript is a programming language that's a superset of JavaScript. Since I haven't actually used TypeScript before, I decided to ask it if it could give me a hello world function. Not only did it write the function in such a manner that I could literally copy paste it out, but it also explained the function to me. And this is really just the beginning. And here is where things get interesting. I've been working on a small application and I was getting an error that I couldn't figure out. I decided to copy paste this error into ChatGPT to see what it would say. Here's some JavaScript in VS Code for a upload for a video app I'm working. This code is failing when I try to run it in Node.js. I copy-pasted this straight into ChatGPT asking if it could fix the following code for me. What I received back was my code fixed. And not only that, ChatGPT went through and gave me the code to copy-paste and even explain to me exactly what was wrong, why it was wrong, and how it was fixed. In this example, I had written my return function incorrectly, basically making a bit of a typo. And here, it's gone through and fixed that return, making sure that it's spelled correctly. It's also being a bit cheeky here, adding in a comment that it fixed the typo right here on the line where it says return. If I didn't know any better, this could have come from a real human. Even, for example, a mentor or a supervisor that could be checking and reviewing your code. And this makes me question exactly what things might look like in the future of development, because this could really be like a personal assistant of a sort. But ChatGPT has a lot of relevance, even outside of programming, since it's practical to pretty much anything. Here, I wanted to create a list of food I can eat that don't include carbs because I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight. It gave me 3 dishes that I can have: grilled chicken, as well as shrimp, as well as some omelets. Taking this one step further, I asked if it could create a shopping list for me based on those meals. And yes, it did that very easily. Not only that, it indented them and made them nice and readable. I think that ChatGPT is here to stay. I think it'll be revolutionary. It'll become part of our day-to-day lives. And its tools and models to actually build websites, applications, and businesses. And the third and final part will be the technical aspect, which is
website visitors bouncing? Stress less. Convert more. Try Hotjar.
You've probably heard that trading stock options is one of the fastest ways to make money in the markets.
This ChatGPT tutorial is a small crash course for any beginner, so we'll be doing a number of things, from creating a
I'll be back in 30 seconds. I'll give me something to drink, okay?
brand new account on OpenAI to logging and using ChatGPT to some of the more advanced ways to use it. If there's anything you want to know, this video should cover it all. Let's begin. I'm going to start on Google here and I'm going to browse to find OpenAI. You can also head over to openai.com if you want to skip this step. Here is the company that basically created ChatGPT. They've created a number of different types of APIs, and if you want to have a look at them all, you can head over to the API page. We're going to be looking at the ChatGPT version. If you want to head to that, you should be able to select the top nav bar here. This will take you to a page called chat.openai.com. If you don't already have a login with OpenAI, you can select to sign up and create a brand new one. For the sign up, it's quite easy. You can simply log in with an email address or with a Google or Microsoft account. While I already have an account, I'm going to create a brand new one so that you guys can see this process. I'm going to sign up with a new email address and go through the prompts to create an account this way. This will require the email address as well as a password and a two-step verification process, which we'll do. The first thing that'll happen is an email will be sent to the mailbox that you're signed up with. In this case, it'll be sent to my Gmail address. I'm going to head over to that inbox now, and we're going to select the verification for email address button. This will basically activate the account so we can log straight into the OpenAI systems. Now, the OpenAI dashboard isn't ChatGPT, it's a separate dashboard to start using some of their normal models here for their OpenAI systems. But to go back to ChatGPT, we need to select the link up here that takes us to chat.openai.com. Here, we'll need to log in one more time, and this should take us to the ChatGPT system. So again, I'm going to put in my email address as well as my password in here, and this will now finally take me to ChatGPT. As this is the very first time I'm using it, I need to fill out just a few more details. So here I'm going to fill out my name as well as my phone number, which will verify my account. This will send me that two-step verification, so I'll put in the code I received on my phone number. And finally, we're now in ChatGPT and its systems, and we can start to use it. The first thing to know is that ChatGPT is free, and it's mainly used right now for research purposes. There are a few prompts worth reading here when you get started. Things like their goal here is to get some external feedback in order to continue to improve the system, as well as making it safer. They also have a few safeguards in place because there are occasions where the generations are incorrect or even misleading. So be aware of that, because if offensive or biased content is produced, then you might not want to use the given advice. Let's have a look at what else is being used here. So we also have the collection of data. So the prompts and items that you are entered in are actually reviewed by their AI trainers in order to improve the systems. So this means just take notice of what kind of prompts you're putting in, and also don't share sensitive information that might be happening inside your conversations, which means that if you're putting in passwords, which really you shouldn't be, try not to post screenshots of that. There's also an importance of feedback here, because as you do discover and utilize the system more, giving feedback can help them improve the system. There is a Discord server that you can join where you can share your feedback, and this one over here is actually accessible. So I'm just going to log into this OpenAI one, and it already has 500,000 members, which, wow, that is quite a few. You'll need to go through the prompts here, so visit the website. Make sure that you read this and then complete the little survey here, making sure that you're not going to be doing anything such as spamming or anything like that. So I've just applied here, and here we've got all our discussion threads and whatnot, so you can join as part of the community. Now, let's begin. This is ChatGPT. It actually has a couple of elements here on the page worth knowing. We've got the sidebar here, which essentially doesn't really do much. The main item here is the reset thread, which I'll get into shortly. Here we have a couple of example inputs that we can place, and the input is just over here. This is where you can type your text. We also
Translate programming languages. Hmm.
Also have some details here about the capabilities and limitations. Let's take a look at all of this. So in terms of the capabilities, the ChatGPT system actually remembers what you said in previous conversations. Now, be aware that this is the conversation thread that you're currently having. If you strike up a brand new conversation thread, that won't be remembered, just the current one that you're in. It also allows you to do follow-ups and corrections. So for example, if you didn't get quite the answer that you're looking for, you can always ask for another one or really just re-prompt for a different option. The AI is also trained to decline providing negative or inappropriate requests. So if, for example, you're asking for something malicious, most times out of 10, it will not provide that. However, there are odd situations where it might accidentally do this. And let's go to the limitations this time to have a look at some of the problems that you might encounter when using ChatGPT. Firstly, some of the generations might actually be inaccurate. It is only trained until the last couple of years of information, so it's not able to, say, access the internet right now. It is in an offline state as of a year or two ago. It also doesn't do mathematics very well, so it might have some issues if you're doing things like 10 plus 9. It might not give you the correct answer. There's also some bias to the content that is produced based on what you've produced earlier in the conversation. And this could essentially mean that it occasionally produces some harmful instructions, and those have to just sort of be ignored. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, there is limited knowledge because the actual AI is trained for events just towards 2021. This means that it won't have up-to-date information of relevant and current facts that are happening in the world. With all of this said and done now, we can now actually start taking a look at using ChatGPT. The first thing to take note of is that using it is very simple. All we have to do is enter in a message or a query or a prompt of what we want the AI ChatGPT to do for us. And then we get an output. There are a few examples here with buttons basically asking us maybe explain what
Oh, that's cute.
Quantum computing is, or how to make a HTTP request in JavaScript, but I'm going to minus these out and I'm going to use my own, which is what is 10 plus 9 as a question mark. This is a pretty simple prompt. Then we simply select enter or set the button here and press and click on it, and we start with our very first prompt. Now here we have two parts to this prompt. We've got what we've prompted, and then we've got the output here from OpenAI. Now this is pretty damn simple, but there are a few things to take note of here. The first thing is the question, what is 10 plus 9? Now we've got the output here that says 19, but we also have this option here to try again. So if I was to select that, what we end up getting is essentially the same answer, but just written in a different way. In this case, it's been written more mathematically, which is 10 plus 9 equals 19, but it's not just 19 like it was before. And we can continue to click on this, but if, for example, we've given as many results as we possibly can, then it might error out, like you just saw earlier, or it might continue to give us better answers. Like this is a half mathematical, half verbal one, where it says 10 plus 9 is 19. We can try again, and this time it says 10 plus 9 is 19, so it's almost repeating now. You'll get to a point where there's only so many ways it can be written. We have a number of other things to take note of. We've got these thumbs up and thumbs down icons, and this is to give OpenAI some feedback as to the prompts we have here. We also have these arrows here when you hover over to show the different types of outputs that you've gotten based on the input that you've provided. Now I've just done 5 of them, so I can toggle through them, and I like number 5 the most, so this one I can give a thumbs up. Now if, for example, it gave a poor answer, we could do the same by going back here. It says an error occurred, and I say no answer provided. So this, for example, is how you would provide feedback to the system if you needed to. Now this is our very first prompt in this conversation. We can continue to make more prompts, such as saying, how good is OpenAI's ChatGPT at maths? And ask this question. So this question is still part of this conversation. And we're getting an answer now being streamlined and generated from OpenAI's ChatGPT. It says, as a large language model trained by OpenAI, it doesn't really have the ability to perform mathematical calculations. Now, here's where you might have to be careful. There are situations where the outputs might not actually generate the kind of consistent answers you might be looking for. Such in this example, I'm going to trick the AI, saying that it is actually 20. 10 plus 9 is 20. Now, the prompt will say that it is a language model. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to ask one more prompt saying, is 10 plus 9 equal 20? And since I previously said that it was, now it's being tricked. It actually does think that 10 plus 9 is 20, and it's going to confirm that answer. This is where confirmation bias might come into play, and you have to be careful what kind of prompts you're putting in because they will influence the outputs that ChatGPT provides. Now, this entire thing here is a conversation, and we could continue this conversation indefinitely. But we're not going to do that. We're going to start a new conversation. This is because all of this conversation is essentially structured in such a way that it's in history. It's essentially taking reference of what we said earlier in the conversation and pulling that context into new responses. This is why we got 10 plus 9 is now correct as 20, which doesn't make much sense. In order to go back, we're going to reset the thread, and we're going to select the top left button over here in order to do that. It'll take us back to this main dashboard here, and now we can start up a brand new conversation. I'm going to ask the same question here. Is 10 plus 9 20? Which we know is incorrect, but we tricked it earlier that it was. This time, however, since the ChatGPT system is not referencing that previous conversation, it's going to answer the correct manner. Even though math isn't the best example, this is just a good example to showcase that no, 10 plus 9 is not equal to 20, it's actually 19, which is correct. And with that said and done, we now know all the basics to more or less utilize ChatGPT. There are a few other things I want to show on the website before we move on to some more advanced examples and how to utilize ChatGPT to its full effect. Let's take a look at the rest of the website here. We have this toggle here for dark and light mode. So the default, I'm pretty sure, is the dark mode or whatever your operating system is on. I'm going to swap to dark mode, which, well, doesn't do anything, but then I can also swap to light mode, which is a little bit harsh on the eyes. Personally, I prefer the dark mode, which is what I'll keep it connected to. I also have the option here to connect to the Discord server that we had a look at earlier, as well as the option to have a look at the FAQs and updates, which takes you to a forum-like website here where you get to learn a little bit more about ChatGPT, how it works, and its background. It is essentially based on the GPT 3.5 model, which is a newer one that provides human-like feedback. Let's begin with our first advanced prompt. This prompt will be on how to create some food, specifically some seafood. First of all, I don't particularly know yet what type of food I want, so I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me 10 dishes with seafood. And here is an example of a list prompt.
Which weighs more?
This is where you
fat
ask ChatGPT to give you a specific number of items of a specific number of things.
There's an old,
In this
very
case,
bad
it's 10
sort of,
items of seafood. The output here should be
I
based
just thought of something to ask it to see if it has a. Tell me a joke about a Republican, Democrat, and a anarchist. Which ways, yeah, I'm thinking, my mind's straight. I'm starting to think of goofy things to ask Chat GDP, like which weighs more, a pound of fat or a pound of muscle? Or ask it, tell me a joke about a Republican, a Democrat, and an anarchist.
on the context of that query. So in this example, it's a human prompt that is being outputted with a list of 10 items, but it also gives you a little bit more context here, saying that there are different levels of difficulty for each one of these dishes. Now, this is where things can get interesting, because we can now start having a look at this list and selecting options we like, such as the first two for shrimp and salmon burgers, and then following up this conversation with more queries. I'm going to ask in the next part of this conversation if ChatGPT can create a shopping list for me based on the very first two items, those two being shrimp and salmon. I don't have to particularly say shrimp and salmon, it should just know based off the context of the conversation. And the result here is essentially creating another list, but this list does not have a specific length. It's based on the options we added in earlier. So here it provides an output that is indented and bullet pointed for each one of the dishes, for the salmon burgers and the shrimps, to let me know exactly what I would need to buy from the shops to be able to put these together. That is pretty damn cool. And this is just also still the beginning, because we can continue this conversation based on all this context. Now that ChatGPT has provided us a list of 10 dishes, as well as a shopping list for all the ingredients we would need to make one or two of those dishes, the next practical question is quite intuitive, which is, can you tell me exactly how to cook, for example, salmon burgers, which is something of a thing that we would normally have to Google a lot for. But based on this and the ingredients, ChatGPT will provide us with one
How
final
does
list
it do
of
that?
exactly
That's
what
the
steps
real
we would
question.
need to
How does
put
it
them
do
together.
that?
This is just a quick shopping list example of OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now that you have an idea of how you can continue a conversation, let's have a look at some more examples. This time, I'm going to use ChatGPT to do some coding for me. I'm going to use one of the pre-made prompts here on how to do a HTTP request in JavaScript. This is a pretty ordinary prompt, but here we'll get to start to see some of the more coding aspects of ChatGPT and what it can perform. Here, it's going to answer this question, but it's going to do this in a number of ways. First, it'll give me some context as to what it's doing. Then, it's going to give me the code snippet of exactly how to perform the function based on the prompt I've put in. And then finally, it'll give me a description of what the code is specifically doing. All of this is quite useful, and this is just the beginning. I'm going to request ChatGPT to update this request. And instead of it just being a generic API call for data, instead we're going to grab some weather data. Now I'm going to ask if it can get me the weather in New York City, and I wanted to output how this query might look like in terms of JavaScript. The response back is that OpenAI will generate the request for you. It will create a generic version of that request using a weather API that doesn't really exist. You'll need to pick your own with an API key that you'll need to enter. But the request should look something like this, where it's getting an example.com, passing in the weather city, being New York City, as well as the units, and passing in the API key. It'll then explain exactly how this GET request would work, as well as how it would come back in the form of a JSON that you could then utilize inside your application. This is all pretty useful, but not quite everything that we're looking for just yet. The next step here is to ask it to update this query in order for it to loop through the data that we would get back from this API and then place this into a website. Now, something to take note of here with ChatGPT is that you have to be quite accurate in how you're requesting different things. This is why if, for example, you have a background in programming, writing these prompts might be a lot easier because you know what you're after. Whereas if you're not quite sure, it might be a little bit more difficult. And this is actually kind of true for all types of industries where ChatGPT might be useful. In this example, I'm getting it to loop through temperature, wind, and precipitation. And this should create a brand new output for me. And this is where the complexity and benefits of what ChatGPT start to shine through. Because what's going to happen here is we're going to get a piece of code that is not just a fetch request, but it's also going to be a loop function, which is going to pull out the values from the data response, and then it's going to put this into a website for us. After it pulls out the values of temperature, wind speed, and precipitation, it's then going to create the JavaScript code to place them into a website using p-element tags and then append them to the website body. Finally, it's going to go through the code here and explain exactly what's happening like I just have been, where it's using an example API with example code, so you really need to update this to make it work for your own project. There are going to be occasions where the ChatGPT systems are going to be offline or, for example, unable to answer a prompt. In this next example, I wanted to do a story about a rabbit and a mouse, and I put in an option here and I got a response back that an error has occurred. I've selected try again a couple of times and that didn't work either. Now, this can sometimes occur when the output of a prompt might, for example, have some incorrect information, maybe something that might be harmful, or maybe even inaccurate. And in those situations, ChatGPT is automatically set in such a way as to not to provide a response. This is a safety mechanism. Sometimes a different way to approach this is to simply write a different prompt so that you might have a different output from ChatGPT. But in some situations, if the servers are entirely down, you might find that you just might have to wait a little bit. Another thing you can do is always refresh the page, or alternatively just log off completely, restart the browser, and then log back into your session, because that also sometimes fixes the problem. Now, let's do a short story. I'm going to do a story about a rabbit and a turtle that went on an adventure. This is a simple request for a story from OpenAI, and it's actually quite good at providing these. It's going to give us a story about these two that go on an adventure where they swim across a river. There is a small moral to this story, which is useful, but it's really kind of generic here. If I want to have a more specific story based on the prompt I'm putting in, I'm going to have to be more specific with the prompt. And this is where follow-up conversations can be useful. For this example, I want to change the moral of the story to be one more focused about patience, especially when doing a story like this. It makes sense between a rabbit and a turtle. ChatGPT should be able to now rewrite the entire story with more emphasis on this specific moral. If we look closely, it has done just that. It's got a moral here about how it was important to be more patient, and the turtle was able to do this. This time along, I wanted to also give me the same story, but throw in a little bit of humor. So I'm going to ask it to keep the moral and add in a joke maybe somewhere at the end. Let's see what happens this time. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but we can see that it's more or less the same story, but at the very end of the story, we have a nice little joke here that I guess it goes to show that slow and steady really does win the race. Another type of prompt that you can work with ChatGPT is one of a sort of storytelling video game, which is a really cool one that I've always enjoyed because of the creative answers that ChatGPT provides. In this case, I'm going to give the prompt that ChatGPT is going to pretend to be a text video game with options of A, B, C, and D. And then from that, we're going to pick a scene from The Matrix and we're going to see what we get presented with. The output is based on some storytelling. It begins nice and simple. You find yourself in a dark alley, and we've got the options to select from. Here, I can now continue this conversation by selecting an option, such as the option B here, and the story continues. What's really interesting about this type of prompt is that you can pick any type of story from any type of scenario. You can pick ancient history, you can pick literature, you can pick movies, and then you can enjoy the creativity that ChatGPT provides while also going through and being a little bit part of that experience. Another popular way to use ChatGPT is to generate content for things like websites or even documents that you might need to prepare. While you might not want to use the entire document as is, you'll need to modify it, it can give you a helping hand in creating these. In this example, I'm going to create a copyright and privacy policy for a website. This is something common I have to do as a developer, but here I have an outline of a bit of a template that I can start using. And I can be a bit more specific, saying that it's for a accounting website, which allows me to maybe have something more, outlined for that type of a website as part of the privacy.
Hi, I'm John Cristani, and I want you to work for me, and I want to take 50% of everything you make. And you might be wondering, why is John doing that? Well, I want to be vested in your success. But if I have a system that works, I want to make as much money as
policy as well as the copyright statement. Of course, if you want to take this a step further, we can do that too. Since I'm located in Australia, I want these templates to be more specific to this country. So I'm going to ask it to update these. In the prompt, I'm just going to simply write that as someone who lives in Australia, Perth, please update these to be relevant for the country that I live in. The output from ChatGPT essentially is the same, but with new updated information such as the Privacy Act, which is specific to Australia, as well as wording such as including Australia and international copyright law in its template. ChatGPT is also quite creative as well as being able to produce humor. In this example, I'm going going to ask it to write a nerdy pun. Why was the math book sad? Because it had too many problems. Yeah, good one. If we do a refresh, we get more or less the same output, but we can continue to ask it for more jokes or more puns as we need, and we'll get quite a few many. Of course, depending on how you write this prompt is how you'll also get the output. So for example, you might want a longer joke. So in this case, I'm going to say, write me a nerdy maybe joke or a short story, and they would produce a longer content versions of the same output. You can also be deliberate about your jokes and content, such as combining two elements together to see what is produced. In this example, I'm going to combine a hat with a rabbit and see what ChatGPT can come up with. I'm going to ask it to tell me a joke combining these two items. And here I get, why did the hat keep falling off the rabbit's head? Because it had a hairline. Nice. You can also put ChatGPT into situations to produce humor and jokes too. So for example, I'm going to get it to pretend to be, say, Elon Musk, and I'm going to pretend it had just bought Twitter, which, Elon sort of has done. Then to create a joke, Elon would say after he's bought Twitter. Now, since the API doesn't know that Elon has bought Twitter, it's going to have to guess here. But its guess is actually kind of accurate, saying that Elon would increase the character limit. There is another type of prompt which is useful, and this is the one of writing things such as documents or cover letters or even job applications altogether. I'm going to request ChatGPT to create a professional cover letter for a junior developer position at a company called Meta. And it's going to be for myself, Adrian Twarog, and I want to essentially use it as something that I can do to apply for this job who knows also the basics for programming in general. So with this kind of a prompt, it's quite specific, but it will also give me a specific output. So here I've generated one to a hiring manager. It's giving me a good introduction of who I am and what I've done. Apparently I've done a bachelor's degree of computer science, which is impressive, as well as working at an internship company called XYZ. So all of these are things that I would maybe need to update a little bit before, say, posting it off. But this also might be inaccurate. I might not even have a bachelor's degree. This is where we can go through and update this prompt of this cover letter, say removing the fact that I have maybe no prior job experience, but maybe listing out that I worked on quite a few different types of projects when I actually was doing a boot camp in programming rather than going through university. OpenAI will go through this prompt and update it based on the context of what is now required, and this is what makes it pretty cool because you can essentially version out different types of cover letters here depending on your needs. The real trick here is to be specific whenever you're prompting ChatGPT to create an output for you, but in terms of that, it usually grabs the context of what you're saying quite effectively as long as you write it in a clear and understood way. Let me
Okay, folks, I'm going to take a 15-minute mincemeat pie break. I see you folks back over here about 10:15. Okay. That would cost us a fortune. Okay. Okie dokie. Now you see the way the ball's sticking here? That's generally, I think, because of some oil or something on it. Nonetheless, let's just come back over here.
Let me continue this example. This time, based on this cover letter, I want ChatGPT to create a resume for me that I could maybe combine as part of this application. So I can simply write, based on this cover letter, write a resume which includes things like skills, maybe work experience, maybe even other things such as languages or etc. Based on the context of this, I'm applying for the same position, and let's have a look at what GPT produces. So here it starts off with some essentials, which is like a phone number as well as a spot there for an email address. It has a small summary if, for example, the person skipped reading the cover letter. It then goes through and lists out my skills, which is quite cool, as well as the education. It actually has combined both a bachelor's degree and a boot camp, which are two separate things from that context, but we could update that. It's added in the experience as well as some example projects, and all of this is content that could now be used in a resume as long as it was properly updated with real-world examples of what I've actually done. ChatGPT is also very effective at doing summaries as well as pulling out content from documents. Let's have a look at the Privacy Act of 1988 here from Australia. I'm going to scan down to this document and I'm just going to copy paste a random section of it into ChatGPT. Then I'm going to give ChatGPT a query of what to do. In this example, I wanted to maybe summarize or explain to me this Privacy Act in simpler terms, and then I'm going to copy paste the text.
Let's take a brief detour here. Continuing our story, so here's a brief story about three walruses that was written in the style of H.G. Wells, the great science fiction writer. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived three walruses who were the best of friends. Their names were Walrus 1, Walrus 2, and Walrus 3. The three walruses lived in a beautiful bay nestled among the snowy peaks of the Arctic Circle. They spent their days basking in the sunshine, diving for tasty seafood, and playing games with each other. One day, as the walruses were lounging on the ice, they heard a strange noise coming from the sky. They looked up and saw a peculiar contraption descending from the clouds. It was a flying machine, unlike they had ever seen before. The walruses were fascinated by the flying machine and watched as it landed in the ice. A door opened and out stepped a man with a wild white beard and a curious expression on his face. The man introduced himself as Professor H.G. Wells, a renowned scientist and inventor. He had built a flying machine which he called a time machine in order to travel through time and space. The walruses were amazed by the machine and begged Professor Wells to take them on a journey through time. The professor agreed, and the three walruses climbed climbed aboard the time machine with excitement. As they traveled through time and space, the walruses saw many amazing sights and visited strange and wonderful places. They saw the ancient pyramids of Egypt, the Great Wall of China, and the Taj Mahal. They even flew to the moon and back. But eventually it was time for the walruses to return home. And Professor Wells set his time machine to return to the present. And the walruses said goodbye to the kind scientists and climbed out of the flying machine. As they returned to their bay, the walruses couldn't stop talking about their amazing journey through time. They knew that they would never forget their adventure with Professor H.G. Wells and his incredible time machine. Okay, enough of this foolishness.
Here. There are a few other variations that we can do here, and I'll get into those shortly, but for the time being, let's just start off with this simple example. The output is just a sentence or a paragraph here explaining what this section of the Privacy Act intends to explain. And while I won't get into the specifics of that, this is just an example of how you can do this. This is basic summarization. Of course, you can summarize it even further, such as requesting ChatGPT to simply pull out the 5 most important keywords from the above statement. Summarization with ChatGPT can work in a number of ways. You don't always just have to explain a summary. You can give it specifics of how you want to present that information, such as explaining it to me like I'm 5 years old. This can give quite a few different types of answers. You can do it for someone who's older, younger, or you could even simplify that even further by asking to explain it for a 3-year-old. And I like this answer because it gave a prompt here where I could understand that if someone does something bad with your private information, the government will help make it better. That is definitely for a 3-year-old. Another way we can request summarization is by being specific with the word count, such as explaining it in 20 words or less. Here, it looks like OpenAI had to think a little bit on how to explain this one, but the resulting answer was within the context of what I requested, which was for it to be in 20 words or less, and I actually really liked this one. It said, "The Privacy Act is a law that protects individuals' information and provides a mean for privacy concerns."
So you say.
I'm now going to explore some of the strengths of ChatGPT in terms of blogging, writing articles, rephrasing, and much more. We want to create a blog topic, and we're going to use ChatGPT to assist in that process. We're going to request that it provides 10 blog topic title ideas for an article that might be something to do with, say, graphics design or website graphics design, and that is it. From that, it's going to give us a list of 10 different types of options. We've got things like the essential principles for graphics design, role in color, common mistakes, etc. From this list, I'm going to select option 3, which I like, 7 common mistakes to avoid in website graphics design. But I don't particularly like that title just yet. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me 5 variations on that topic title. Then I'm going to paste in the topic title. Here it gives me 5 different types of options here, but all of them aren't that interesting, and I'm actually quite happy with that very first one. Now we can move into writing the outline for this blog post using ChatGPT. I'm going to ask it to provide me the outline for the article in clear writing and the title which I picked, which is the 7 pitfalls to avoid for website graphics design. Now I will get a pretty well written outline. It'll include an introduction with a couple of points, the 7 pitfalls themselves. So it'll pick out those pitfalls, give me a short summary in dot points of what they are and how they work, and then it'll also fill in a conclusion. This is pretty much everything that I would need if I was writing a blog article, and this is again still just the beginning. because now I'm going to ask it to even write the introduction for this article, and I want it to be at least 3 sentences long. The output here will give me that introduction, which is graphics design plays a crucial role in the success of a website, etc. Here's where we can start playing around with writing blogs and content in general. We could ask ChatGPT to rephrase the following sentence and then paste in the sentence we want. And here it'll give us an alternative sentence, which is a little bit more nuanced, I suppose. It says the success of a website is heavily influenced by its graphics design. It's essentially saying the same thing. But we can also ask ChatGPT to do a number of other things, such as lengthen the sentence. So here it's saying the same sentence, but it's a little bit longer. The reverse is also true. If we've got sentences that are slightly too large, we can also ask ChatGPT to shorten them, and this provides a shorter version, which is very similar to what we originally had. And we can even ask it to fix the grammar. So say I was just writing my own blog and I wanted to spell check and grammar check, then it can work as a bit of a co-writer there for you, essentially making sure that your sentence, I good graphics design impact good website, comes out essentially saying a good graphics design can impact a good website. Much better written. If you're writing for blogs in different languages, ChatGPT can even translate that to pretty much any language. I'm just gonna take a guess here and see if it can translate the above statement or sentence into, say, German in this case. I could probably plug this into Google to make sure it's correct, but honestly, I think I almost trust ChatGPT here more with a translation than even Google. The reverse is also true. If you've got something in a different language, such as German, and you want to translate it back to English, you can do that. You can even add in things like adding it in a friendly, joking way, and we get back this example here: a good graphics design can totally rock a website's socks off, which is pretty funny. Now that we have an outline for a blog, an introduction, and say we've written it as well, we can even prepare a newsletter for it to be sent out by email, and even have ChatGPT create the subject line for that email. Here I'm just going to ask it to create the subject line for an email newsletter based on the above, and it's going to give me an output here of maximize your website's potential with these graphics design tips. Perfect. I hope you guys enjoyed this ChatGPT tutorial. This crash course is just an introduction so that you can understand a better way of how to use it to your best advantage. Of course, if you have questions or if you have suggestions, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want to see content like this. Thank you.
Let's see, Fortran. Are we walking the truth? Do we love our enemies? Fortran. but he wasn't the nearest relative. What if we say write a Fortran program that creates a clock with time on the X, Fortran. Yep. No, that's interesting. Hmm. How to let's see what's going on over here.
So I ordered pizza.
Okay, so let's get the. I don't know if we've actually
To
done this or not.
powerbi.microsoft.com and click on the products and click on Power BI Desktop.
Okay. Okay, good. Let's click on this. I may have actually already done this before, but we'll see. Okay. Now, of course, what's interesting is he chose 10. He's talking about the book of Ruth in the Bible, in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, as it's called by Christians incorrectly. Uh, okay, good. Okay, let's go Power BI. A 10-minute introduction to Power BI. Now, this guy here, this Chindu, is a pretty good guy. He's 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 Excel. And he's Power BI. I don't think he's done anything with. Okay. Mm, okay. Let's take the data. So you see, it actually took this and converted this into a long date. Okay.
Download the free desktop application from Microsoft website and install it. Then open the Power BI desktop application on your computer and you will
Now, there's some curious things in the book of Ruth in the first part. I think it's a book of Ruth anyway. You know, she has two daughter-in-laws who are Gentiles, uh, probably Moabite women who married their daughters, married their sons. Of course, today it could have been a daughter, but anyway, sons. The sons die. One daughter-in-law, leaves. The other one goes with Ruth back to to the to Israel, and then they start hatching this plot in order to get the I think it's Ruth in it, yeah, who start hatching this plot to get Boaz to marry her servant. Okay, she tells her to do all these things so Boaz will notice her first in the field. Then he has her go. Then she has him go to the uh, to the grain bin, the grain tower, where all the men were there, working with the grain. And when Boaz goes to sleep, she goes down, uncovers his feet, and the question is, does uncover his feet really mean uncover his feet? Or is that a euphemism for something else? And she lays down at his feet. He wakes up and says, "Well, who are you? What are you doing here?" Well, to me, that's kind of suspicious. She waits till he's probably drunk. She waits till he passes out. Then she lays down at his feet, which puts him in a very awkward position. Okay, you ask me. Anyway, you can read the book of Ruth for yourself. It's a fairly short book. It is, in many ways, it is probably one of the key stories for the Jews in the Old Testament. The story of Ruth it's important because she's actually first listed in the genealogy of Yeshua himself. Remember, there's two women in Jesus' genealogy, both Gentiles. Okay, uh,
be greeted with a welcome screen like this. You might actually see a login screen as well. You can cancel that out and then you will come to a page like this. As I have been using Power BI for a while, I have got several other files here listed, but you can also close this one out using that X mark and you will get into Power BI. Power BI is a data analysis and visualization software. So using Power BI, we can take any kinds of data, whether the data is in an Excel workbook, a database like SQL Server, or even paste the data directly into Power BI and do the analysis. To help us understand how to use Power BI, I have made a sample data set for you. This has just 6 columns and about 1000 rows of data. It is from a fictional company called Awesome Chocolates, where we sell and ship chocolates. So here is the shipment data for the year of 2022 so far. So locate that file in the video description below and download the file. And then go to Power BI and use the import data from Excel button here. Click on.
Now, Christians are very good at skipping parts of scripture they don't agree with. Okay, it's as simple as that. Whether it's a word or a verse, they'll gladly skip any verse that doesn't match, that doesn't agree with their interpretation. Okay.
On it and point to the file that you have downloaded. You will get a navigator screen asking you what data you want in the spreadsheet. So select the data tab, and this is the data that we want. You can straight away load it, but Power BI also gives you an option to transform the data. This is helpful if your data is not exactly the way you want, or you want to do a little bit of data cleanup before doing any analysis. For now, let's just load this data.
No.
When you load the data, the screen will change, and then now you will get a prompt saying build visuals with your data, and your data will show up here in the fields panel. This is a good time for us to understand various components of the screen before we make anything within Power BI. The Power BI screen is divided into 3 main areas. You have got a ribbon on the top, which is useful for accessing various features of the application. If you have used a tool like Excel or Outlook, the ribbon functionality is quite similar. You can use the ribbon to switch between different things. And depending on what else you're doing on the screen, some new ribbons may also appear. The second biggest area is your canvas area. This is denoted with the dotted lines, and this is where any data analysis that you're doing, any visuals or charts or tables will appear. And the third main area is the right-hand side panels. These are the panels that you can use to kind of build stuff or change things. So for example, you can use the visualizations panel to insert a graph or customize how that graph is done. Likewise, the fields panel is useful to accessing any of the data points. Let's just build our very first chart, and then we will go and understand how everything works. If you remember the data, it is a shipment data. So if I expand the data view, I can see that I have got all of these columns. For example, we have a country. So let's just see how many boxes we ship by country. So for something like that, a column chart is pretty useful. So I will click on the column chart, and it will add a column chart on the screen. I'm going to move this here and then resize it like that. In this column chart, you have got x-axis and y-axis. X-axis is the horizontal thing here, and I want to put country there. So just drag and drop country into the x-axis. Onto the y-axis, we will put boxes shipped, and we will get a number of boxes shipped by each country. As of this data, Australia has the most boxes shipped and New Zealand has the lowest boxes shipped. And when you create the visual, Power BI automatically arranges them in the descending order of the data. Let's just say you're very happy with this, but you don't like the blue color.
Now you don't like it, too bad. I don't like it. I don't like it.
You can change the color of the visual by selecting the visual and going to the visualizations area here and clicking on the format your visual option. From here, you can go to the columns and change the color. Sometimes it is very hard to remember exactly where everything is. You can also search for color here, and all the color options will appear in the search results. And from that, the blue color is what we want to change. So let's switch this to orange and we will get a visual like that. Let's add one more visual. This time I want to see how things are happening by individual product. So for that, I'm going to make a bar chart and we will add another bar chart. When you click on the bar chart, Power BI will put it in any available space on the canvas, and you can kind of resize it again and move it around as you want. So in this bar chart, we have got y-axis, which is the vertical one, and that's where I want to see my product. And onto the x-axis, I want to see again boxes shipped. So we'll put that. We'll see all our products listed, one bar per product, and again the default coloring is blue. So far, nothing seriously different about how you create charts from in Excel or something else. But here comes the first major difference of Power BI. If you were now to click on a specific country, for example Australia, you can see that instantly all the Australia related boxes shipments by product are highlighted. This is a powerful and default feature of Power BI. This particular feature is called interaction, where every visual is interactive by default. The interactions go in any direction. So for example, if I pick on eclairs here, I can see where we are sending eclairs. So for example, eclairs, Canada seems to be one of the biggest countries. And when you point your mouse on that, Power BI will show you a helpful tooltip there to help you understand what is going on. To go back to the way visuals are, you can again click on the same thing that you highlighted, and that will take you back to the way things are. Apart from columns and bars, you can use any of the other visuals to analyze the data and see things. For example, if you want to see the trend of shipments over a period of time, or how much amount we made over a period of time, we can use a line chart for that. Let's just make some space for that. So we will add a line chart, and in this line chart on the x-axis, I'm going to put my date. Now date is a special type of data in Power BI, and whenever you use a date, it will create a hierarchy wherein the same date can be seen at year, quarter, month or day level. This looks a bit confusing, but let's put y-axis value here and then we will understand how that works. So let's add amount to the y-axis. We thought we are going to get a line, but we just get a single dot.
Where is the line?
This is because of the date hierarchy.
Hmm.
Let's just make some space for that. So we will add a line chart, and in this line chart on the x-axis I'm going to put my date. Now date is a special type of data in Power BI, and whenever you use a date it will create a hierarchy wherein the same date can be seen at year, quarter, month or day level. This looks a bit confusing, but let's put y-axis value here and then we will understand how that works. So let's add amount to the y-axis. We thought we are going to get a line, but we just get a.
No, I got a point. So we're going to say x-axis is date, y-axis is amount. Let me get an entire thing here. What happens if we come over here but secondary y-axis?
Single dot. Where is the line? This is because of the date hierarchy, and right now Power BI is showing
Hmm, that's sort of interesting. And that's, my dear friends, is why people don't take Christians seriously, because we can't, I said it before and I'll say it again. The Bible is not a science book. It's a faith book. It's a manual on how to relate to God. So now the preacher's talking about influenza. You know, yeah, do I believe in global warming? Yeah, but the difference is I believe it. I believe global warming began at the end of the ice age. I mean, why else would the glaciers melt if it was a temperature? And over the course of the last, 20 million years, the degree of global warming has probably changed. It's like, let the secular world believe what they want to believe, but the Christians need to stop denying science, okay? Because the church said the earth is flat and the sun, the planetary, and the church said for thousands or for a couple, probably 1,000 years or more, uh, that the sun and the planets revolve around the earth. Preachers trying to talk about science who basically don't. Well, so here's a question: do we get diseases because God wants us to have that disease? If you truly want to sit there and deny science, then I guess it means you won't get a flu shot, right? You can't have both ways. You can't deny science and accept science at the same time. The trouble is, some Christians are obsessed with disproving science. They're more concerned with disproving science than they are with saving people. The command of Jesus is not to go and prove science wrong. The command of Jesus is go, make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey all I commanded them. The Bible, again, I will say one more time, the Bible is not a science book. It's a faith book. It's a manual. It's a faith manual to show us what God expects of us and how to relate to God, how to walk in the way of the Lord. The purpose of the Bible is to teach us how to walk in the way of the Lord. It's as simple as that. Some of it is certainly historical, but some is more about faith than it is about history. Hmm. Hierarchy.
Here's the definition of hierarchy: a system or organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other according to status or authority.
So what can we do here to create? Okay, let's shake this. Now it's duplicate column. Let's come up here and let's say start of year. Okay. Okay. Over here, duplicate again. Okay, start a month. Let's do this one more time. Let's just create the month name. Okay, good. Okay, so now we got this hierarchy here, okay? So that's not too bad, is it? So that's okay. That's okay. Month start, we know the month start. Let's get rid of this. Date hierarchy again, x-axis. So this is completely different. What about, so is it garbage for the evil spirit? But, but what about the evil spirit he sent to? Okay, so that we just you just saw an example of how to use the date function to uh, to create a date hierarchy. Okay.
Me all the data added up at a year level. Whenever there is a hierarchy involved, Power BI also shows these extra buttons on the top of the visual to go down different levels. So if you use this icon, I call this a pitchfork.
You need my pitchfork?
If you're a person who's fairly good with numbers and logic, did you know that you can make $70,000 a year or more as a data analyst? And you can do it with skills that you can learn in just a couple months. There are literally tens of thousands of these jobs.
You can see the data at a quarterly level. Go down once more and we can see the monthly variations by the amount. So from January, we started really strong, then the chocolate sales kind of went down, picked up again in March, went down, and then they kind of went back up again. So this is how you can use a line graph to visualize things. Let's say you have presented this chart to your boss and she suddenly asks you, why did the sales drop in the month of February? You don't have to do further analysis. You can right click on that point and then you can use the analyze, explain the decrease option so that Power BI can do some artificial intelligence and machine learning analysis of your data. For example, it analyzed the data and it found some really interesting things. So I'm gonna add one of these. We'll select this visual and then click on that plus button there to add it to the canvas there. Using this, it tells me that from the month of January to February, our amount has gone down because even though milk bars and dark bites had more amount, these other products had significantly less amounts, and that's why everything kind of got pulled down. You don't have to do further analysis. You can right click on that point and then you can use the analyze, explain the decrease option so that Power BI can do some artificial intelligence and machine learning analysis of your data. For example, it analyzed the data and it found some really interesting things. So I'm gonna add.
Okay, why don't I see an analyze there? Okay, how come I'm not seeing? Right? So, what do you mean? But he made jealous of him, didn't he? Yeah. What about, well, how else could it happen? Okay, so I'm not seeing the analyze function. Hmm. 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 Well, that's interesting, isn't it? We got key influencers and stuff like that. Explained by, I don't know, country. Of course, the great mantra among modern Christians or evangelical Christians is God is in control. God's in control. Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean every event happens as an act of God's will? Does that mean God put Joe Biden in the White House? Well, of course not. Then what does it mean? What does it mean when we say God is in control? So what happened to the analyze functions? Hmm. Here's the thing I don't understand about this. Unless this is just the paid version, because this is only published, you know, back in September, but we're not seeing the analyze function, which is really kind of odd.
One of these, we'll select this visual and then click on that plus button there to add it to the canvas there. Using this, it tells me that from the month of January to February, Our amount has gone down because even though milk bars and dark bites had more amount, these other products had significantly less amounts, and that's why everything kind of got pulled down and we ended up having less amount in the month of February. So these are some of the features that are available within Power BI for you to analyze the data. Now that we have prepared a page of analysis, you may want to save this and share it with your colleagues or your clients. To do that, you can save the Power BI workbook using the Save button here or File, Save. When you save the Power BI file, it will usually just save in your computer, and you can give this file any name. To share this Power BI with another colleague or a person in your organization, you will now need to use the Publish button. And this is where you will have to log into Power BI in order to be able to do that. If you go back to the Microsoft website, you'll see that apart from the free Power BI desktop software, they also have a Pro and a Premium package using which you can share and collaborate with others whenever you do the data analysis. So this is how within large organizations or small organizations, people use Power BI. They use the Pro option or a Premium option to create content and share it with others so that other people can enjoy the reports or files that you have produced. Now that you understand what Power BI is all about, why not spend a little bit more time learning about it? I've got two resources for you. Number one is this video where I talk more about Power BI with plenty of examples. And the second one is my online Power BI course where you can learn how to use Power BI to solve many real-world business analysis problems. Check out the course using the card that is shown on the screen. I'll catch you in one of these places. Bye!
Okay, I tell you what, my friends. I'm going to go and call it a night. All right? I'm going to call it a night. Thanks so much for lurking in the background. If you're back there someplace, thanks so much for that. Let me check and see if you can stream it tonight or not.